Awesome. We are live today on the SEO Leadership, and today we have on Jon Goodey. He is the founder of Indexify. So, today we're going to be talking about marketing intelligence that moves the budget and how real-time growth happens in the first 30 days. There's going to be a lot more. We're going to be chatting to Jon about his company Indexify, his previous experience, what he's going to be looking for future skill sets for SEOs. So you can take some inspiration from that as well. So Jon, thanks so much for joining us today. How are you keeping?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on. Today is actually Jon's first time joining a webinar, and we always say the SEO Leadership webinar is the perfect place to be breaking that trend and starting things off. So this is a very exciting time. And Jon, if you could kick it away for us and tell us a little bit about how you got into SEO and your journey up to founding Indexify, just for our listeners that are tuning in, that would be great.
Okay, yeah. So I started off as a software developer initially, and then I was building web applications, was building things like iOS, Android applications as well, which was quite good. We did everything from like real-time communications at web conferences and things like that. It was really good fun. And as I progressed on and on, I started moving more and more towards the kind of analytical side of things. And I was always fascinated with the behavioral psychology. So the kind of SEO side of things tend to sort of link in quite well with that. So I could be looking through, I could still be doing the tech stuff with the tech SEO, but also be understanding why buyers would make a particular purchase, or what kind of people that you would be like user personas and things like that, and understanding why you would make a website in a certain way. I found that a lot of developers at that time they just wanted a functional spec and they just wanted to build the website from what was given, whereas I was kind of wanting to ask the question, the why, as to why it was being done. And I think SEO is a really nice sort of mixture there of the two.
Awesome. And I kind of wanted to dig into, you have, if I'm correct, 15 years of experience in SEO at the moment.
Yes. Yeah.
How do you think it's, from your personal overview, how do you think it's changed over the 15 years that you've been in SEO, and what do you think are some sort of constant trends that you see that still have stuck through SEO over the years of its evolution and turmoil and turbulence?
Okay, well, obviously with the influx of AI, I would say that that's making the biggest difference. So I think we're seeing more changes, or more concern over changes over the last probably 18 months than we've seen probably in the last 10 years. But there's always been lots and lots of changes I've seen. I think the thing that stays the same, which is always going to be the same, is people are buying. Until we've got an AI tool that makes its own money and decides to make its own purchases, it's still going to be human beings buying from human beings at the end of the day. And that's always going to be a constant. So understanding the reasons why people would make a decision, I think stays the same. It's not changed in that respect.
Awesome. So can you tell us a little bit about Indexify and how sort of the day-to-day infrastructure at your company works? How have you been sort of setting up AI operations over at Indexify? And how have you been sort of developing and evolving with the AI evolution?
Okay, so obviously coming from a software development background, I like to test and try as much new software or different ways of workflows as possible. Back in the early days, I used to do a lot of things with Google Sheets, and then like app scripts and stuff to automate the sheets and do things that way. But now it's gone more kind of robust. So I'll build applications. I'll use things like anything from Netlify or things like TinyHost and DigitalOcean to be able to build like a fully fledged application. Using things like Next.js on the back end, also use it on the front end, and then things like Supabase as a database in the back end. It's great for compiling the data or using text embeddings and storing it into a back-end system there, which is very useful. Also using things like BigQuery as well to store the data, and then using API and MCP protocol to be able to access the data from interfaces such as Claude.
Awesome. And how have you, because you've mentioned that, you obviously are client facing on the front end most of the time. How have you sort of found AI to assist you in from client attraction, client pitching, onboarding and reporting, the whole shebang?
Okay, so I will use AI pretty much for everything I can to some extent. I don't think you can sort of set and go and just have it as a feature that's just going to work on itself. And it's really interesting, really important to know its limitations. At the end of the day, it's a system, or we refer to AI as one thing, but normally what we're talking about is LLMs, which is basically a text prediction system, which has become very advanced. So understanding where it's good at and where it's potentially going to hallucinate and make errors along the way. When things like client onboarding. So if I've got a potential new client, I will use something like Claude to do the research, or Perplexity, or something like ChatGPT to go off and do the research in the background, or Gemini. Gemini, they've got the deep thinking, and also Manus is really good at this as well. And use these tools to really understand the background of the industry, the client, who they are, who their competitors are. These are things that obviously everyone was doing previously, but now you can do so much better. It's so much easier to get so much more information in that area, and understand the landscape of an area. One of the things that I think I love about marketing and SEO is that you learn so many different niches and topics and things. You become like mini experts in all these different products, because basically you're working with these clients all the time. So being able to do that research is really important.
How do you sorry, I know, Tanya, you have a question, but just to quickly build off of this one, how do you stop or sort of put guardrails up for the hallucinations that potentially happen with your research processes?
I will normally use 2 or 3 different tools. So if I won't just trust the information. So if I'm looking at a client, I want to know their background and I want to know the industry, then I'll use something like Perplexity. I'll also use Claude. Sometimes I'll use 3 or 4 tools to do that. And then between all of them, I'll start reading through each one of those and seeing what the commonalities are between them. I can then use the links from them and kind of do the research that I would do normally. I've just got a bigger background that I'm coming from. I'll use something like Notebook LM as well to be able to get additional information or put that information together. And I do a lot of running as well. So it gives me the opportunity to put this all together, make it as a kind of podcast version for myself, even things like 11 Labs. And then my runs tend to be sort of anything from an hour to 2-hour runs. So I can go out for a run and I can be listening to all that information from all these different sources, and then really understanding where I need to investigate further and get a lot better background than I would have had previously.
It's very interesting. I love that.
Yeah, that's incredible. I cannot run for 2 hours, and I can definitely not listen to a podcast while running. So well done on that.
Thank you.
My question was just leading into AI, and obviously you mentioned so many of them, but which one would you say is like the underdog at this stage that people aren't really using as much, and that's really yielding very good results for you?
I'd say still the Claude models and things like Sonnet. They're incredible for coding, and they tend to be all benchmarks in that respect. And yet ChatGPT is like the household name that everyone knows, and it's kind of become synonymous when you're talking about AI, it's ChatGPT. However, I kind of feel that they are falling a little bit behind. You see things like ChatGPT 5, which was a kind of a bit of a botched release to some extent. They've got the real hardcore users who are complaining that they don't have the reasoning models out of the box. They've tried to sort of, make their menu systems better, and now they've gone back to the old format before that you've now got to select through, whether it's thinking and whether you want it as fast mode and things like that. So we're kind of back to where we was. And I think they're struggling a little bit. Also, ChatGPT 5 was deemed to be this model that was going to be almost AGI, and it just feels like an incremental improvement. So I think they are struggling slightly, and I think they've got maybe stakeholder decisions or other things that's making those that they're having to market it as something bigger than it is at the moment.
Yeah, 100%. Coming from your point of view, what part of your ops and teams still requires human expertise versus AI? Like, how are you finding that balance between AI versus human resources? I think especially managing a lean team at the head and the pinnacle of the company and stuff. It's always such an interesting question to ask, founders and leaders at this point in time, is how are you balancing that resource of AI versus human resource?
So I would say everything. I think you need humans involved in every process. AI is a really good tool, and what you can do with language models to go through data sets and build mini applications and everything else is phenomenal. But it makes a lot of mistakes, and it always will. As humans, we make a lot of mistakes anyway. So don't trust it, don't believe it. But it does give you, as a human, the ability to not have to go through and do the kind of the basic part, the grunt work, the find 20 different links or different areas. Can be running a Python script to do that and crawling the site. There's so much you can get AI to do, which leaves whoever's doing the work to actually be thinking more critically, more creative, and doing the bit that's really going to move the needle.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
Definitely. And then I'd love to know, obviously, buy versus build. That's always an interesting one. But how do you then decide to build tools in-house versus just using off-the-shelf AI tools that you can just find?
So obviously, the kind of looks at cost is going to be a big impact on that. If you're looking at a tool and it's maybe say £200-300 a month, you go, well, I know this is potentially that's £2,000-3,000 a year's worth of cost. 10 years, that's £30,000. So if you're in it for the long term, then £30,000 investment, it's well worth looking at how you're going to build something to do it. I think SaaS models are going to be very heavily impacted because there are some really good APIs and data sources that are a lot cheaper. And AI does give you the ability to build that kind of front end quite quickly for kind of your own bespoke applications. So it means that you can get the data. You're even using some of the same sources that these SaaS companies are using, and you can then put your own things together without having to use off the shelf solutions. But I guess the biggest impact is going to be somewhere to do with cost or privacy. So again, if you're in a sector where the client doesn't want to share their data, so you want to be using your own model that you can run on an intranet or an internal server somewhere, then you don't want to be using a SaaS product. So you might end up building something that potentially could cost the same amount, but it's more secure.
Exactly. And I think it's changing so much. We just spoke about ChatGPT 5 coming out, and then constant changes as well. And then you really want to hone back into what is important and about knowledge, like building the knowledge on one platform and then using multiple. It's really hard to then differentiate. So I do agree with you, cost being a major factor, which is really important. And then I'd love to know, just in terms of your current setup, is there anything that you've built or discovered that dramatically improved like the way that you guys work, or any outcomes?
So I would say certain areas, the research side of things has made a big difference. Being able to pull in all the information from different areas and synthesize that in a way that you can really get a deeper understanding of the clients before you start on the work. Also, the reporting side of things, not just creating dashboards, but actually creating something that the users want. And also, if you're working for slightly larger organizations, you sometimes have to create 2 or 3 different versions of a report, because what the marketing manager that you're working with on a day-to-day basis wants to know and understand is different from what their stakeholders want to understand, or the founder or the CEO. So being able to create a report and then recreate that report in a kind of a condensed version, so they can send that straight through to their CEO or their managers, is very, very useful.
Okay,
Awesome. Before we continue on with client side and strategy of AI, I actually wanted to squeeze in 2 quick questions. One being, how do you stay up to date with like AI? What sort of habits do you find yourself practicing during the week? Are you subscribed to newsletters that you particularly follow? Any YouTube podcasts or anything that you sort of get your information from, or is it just purely like I wake up in the morning and I'm experimental till I go to sleep?
So there's one I do listen to, which is the AI Daily Brief, which is very good. It's not marketing focused, but a lot of the stuff, he gets a lot of very up-to-date information very quickly. I know there's constantly on X and stuff like that. You can either watch it as a kind of podcast thing, but that gets updated. That's very good for like information, which I'll probably listen to. Well, 90% of the time I'll listen to that on a daily basis, because it runs, I think, 6 days a week. I also have created my own programs that use things like it'll spin up its own browser, because if you've probably tried to create like a newsletter or anything with AI, you notice that it tends to use cache versions of pages. So you say, I want the information from yesterday, and it gives you it from 3 days ago, but still tells you it was yesterday, which isn't quite right. So I've ended up building more advanced systems. I think you may have noticed on LinkedIn that I've got a daily newsletter on there as well. So what I do is I create all the resources, the sites that I want to use, the main places where a lot of trusted information like Martech and SEMrush, Hrefs and things like that. These sources of information that they're constantly updating. And what I'll do is I'll basically synthesize all that information together, and then I'll put that into something like 11 Labs, and that's what I run to in the morning. So I have 2 or 3 podcasts I'll listen to on a daily basis, and then what I've started doing is I put in, over the last probably 4 or 5 months, putting that together into a newsletter format, because I thought, well, if it's useful for me, maybe it's useful to others as well. So those are 2 of the main things that I'll do. I'll then maybe investigate some of those sites further, look into other sites, see if there's anything else, spin-off topics from that. Perplexity sometimes gives you some feed and information on there as well, but I do find myself probably spending a good couple of hours either reading or listening to the latest articles on a daily basis, which is probably quite useful.
Yeah, I was going to mention with your that's great, but I was also going to mention that I have been really enjoying your newsletters as well. So very interesting that's been the process and things like that. I also wanted to squeeze in a question as well in regards to hiring. So say, for example, candidates are looking to stand out to SEO agencies that are particularly and especially focusing on AI at the moment. What sort of skill sets would you, and I guess you can also say personality traits, would you be looking for in potential hires to join your team to sort of expand that AI department?
Somewhat. So people who've really got a thirst for knowledge. We're in an area at the moment where we're all learning. It's very new to everyone. Within an expert within, other than obviously the people who are working in the research labs who are building the tools, most people who are using them on a daily basis. An expert is someone who knows it for 3-4 years. It's not something that's been around for 20-30 years. So people who really want to learn on a daily basis, people who are creative and are willing to see what it can do, how you can push it, what can you do differently, how can you get a different result from things, not just do. Unfortunately, AI is going to basically take away kind of the boring, the run-of-the-mill stuff. So we need people who are critical thinkers and people who are going to do something that AI can't do.
Yeah.
Don't want someone who's just going to grab some data from there. Someone who's thinking about how they can visualize that data better, or what can they do with that data, how they can build something that's more interactive for a client. What can be done above and beyond that's already there.
Exactly. And I think you need to stay curious as well. And it's like a trial and error. Not everything's going to work and you might waste a little bit of time, but in the end of the day, you've learned something, which I think is invaluable. I'd love to know, in terms of your current team, how do you train them to learn AI, or is it just naturally embedded in what you do right now? Like it's a daily.
So I'll probably, we have like a daily stand-up anyway, but I'll probably talk to people about AI as long as they're willing to listen, or as long as their eyes stay open for. So once I start seeing people drifting off, then I know I need to probably shut up. So that's kind of, but I'll go through. So if I've been working on a program or something, then I'll do a screen share. I'll explain how the program works, how it's getting the data there. I do the same with clients. I've also worked with other agencies as well to help train their teams. So everything from understanding how to prompt better, make sure that you're using more reusable prompts. I think those are some of the really important skills, because you can find yourself inevitably creating the same prompts or writing the same things over and over. So creating templated systems that work and that give you the same results back, as opposed to you create a really good report or really good insight into something and then you try and do it again and it doesn't come out. So creating the structure behind it, I think that side of things is very good. Evals as well, so making sure that people are running tests on different platforms, seeing which systems give different results, because each AI thinking models as well, they all give slightly different ways of doing a task. So you can get some really creative ideas and come up with new ideas from them based on how different models are running as well. So I think that's another area that I enjoy kind of training people on as well. Yeah. And how to automate process as well. So those are the three areas that I kind of try and train people on.
Yeah, amazing. Do you think it's ever gonna be just a part of someone's job, like we have our core position and then we do AI on the side and incorporate that? Or do you think there'll actually be new positions started for just focusing on AI and how to build things, and really that's going to be the core skill?
I think there will be jobs that will just be AI focused. There is, especially larger organizations, there will be, for instance, people like myself. If you was working in a very large organization, you would have people like that who are developing the prompts for the rest of the teams, developing the workflows, the outputs, the automations of systems in the background. So I think there will be new jobs that get made from it, definitely.
Yeah, agreed.
Awesome. I have so many questions lined up after that, but I actually want to get to this topic of what's actually changing in search visibility, strategies for your clients as well, and all of that fun stuff. So I think one of the questions that I had lined up was, what are you doing differently now with SEO content or site structure that you weren't doing 12 months ago?
I think it's so much more important to understand why people are coming to your site. Making sure things like the product pages, category pages are optimized, because if people are getting the informational content from AI overviews or ChatGPT, then you have to look at whether you need to prune some of that content. How necessary are those kind of pieces of information? I think there are some, I know obviously there's some pros and cons to this. If you have got a very heavy informational site, you're probably losing a lot of traffic from AI, and I know companies like Cloudflare are trying to deal with those kind of issues. But I personally think it's a good thing that's happening. I know I'm maybe one of the few sometimes in that area, but I think the way that people are consuming content from sites is they are getting the information they need. They're picking, it's more humanized, although we're using tools to get there. Information you need, or you're optimizing a site for what someone wants to read. So it's putting yourself in the user's perspective. for instance, I always use the example of a recipe site. I really get frustrated because I love cooking, and you go onto a site and you have to read the history of something and warranty
Yeah.
got, and yet all you want to do is you're either standing in the supermarket and you want to know what ingredients to buy, or you're in your kitchen with flour all over your hands and you want to know what the next thing was on the process. So you're trying to finish off cooking something at that time. So you don't need to know the big background. You just need to know, what do I need to mix now and how many eggs do I need to use if it's for 4 people or 6 people. And that's where AI, I think, is really improving those pieces of content.
That's actually quite true, and I really like that perspective shift as well. And then on top of that, I wanted to also ask, because you did mention you were training teams as well on AI. What mistakes or bottlenecks are teams making when trying to optimize for AI?
I think focusing too heavy on structured data or schema markup, thinking that they're going to be able to potentially, or looking at ways to hack the system. I think over the years, if you looked at SEO for the last 15 or more years, the people who have always won out and are not concerned about Google's latest update or anything else are the ones who are creating genuinely good content for their users. And I think that's here to stay, regardless of whether it's AI overviews or you're doing something on the site. So don't look at, is the structure right? Or have I got the schema in the right way? Is it in JSON format? Is it going to be passed by an AI overview model? No, write decent content that the client wants or your customers want to read, and try and build your site in a way that people are going to want to engage with it. If people engage and they enjoy your products, they'll share it, they'll like it, and they'll come back.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's so many questions we have lined up, but I wanted to squeeze this last one in. How are your clients adapting to SEO strategies for AI search results?
So along those kind of lines, I've been saying this before we even started with AI overviews, that we want to be creating content that is genuinely useful for the users and people are landing on there. But it's also given us the opportunity to do new things. So can we create a quiz on that page? Is there something that we can do that will really engage these users? For instance, sometimes you would create something like an interactive element on a page, and it would take, I don't know, maybe weeks or months even to develop. You can do those kind of things in a really short period of time now. So you create a calculator, which is very useful for the user. Create things like a quiz or a color picker is one of the things that we've just done for one client, where you can take they sell like shawls and scarves and things, and you can take a picture of yourself wearing your outfit, and it'll use AI to detect the colors of the outfit and then give you an idea on what products to buy based on that, whether you want something that's contrasting or something that's similar to the colors and things like that. So having fun with it, enjoy building things that are useful.
Do you think it's oversaturating the lead magnet?
Yes.
So do you think we're seeing a die out of lead magnets at the moment, or where do you think the sort of direction is going for that now?
I think people have found ways of automating that kind of lead generation systems, and anyone who's got any kind of following on LinkedIn or anything else is probably getting 5 or 6 emails a day from this. So it's even overtaken people asking for backlinks now. So unfortunately, it means you never know who to trust, and there's probably genuine people offering those services that aren't going to come through because it is being so saturated.
True.
Do you think that it's like something that you maybe don't consider worth the time anymore in investing in?
I haven't for like people trying to get leads in for clients like that. I think you've still got to take that personal, you've got to do something different, because if everyone's just sending out mass emails and things like that and really saturating the market, then what can you do that's different?
Yeah, 100%. Awesome. Last question before we wrap up. What are the next few months looking like for Indexify? Is there, how are you sort of mapping out, I guess, how AI is developing and how are you sort of aligning Indexify to that, if I can put it in that sense?
Really training and helping our clients understand what's potentially changing and how they can improve based on AI. From our own options, how can we improve as well in regards to, say, the research side of things, the reporting? What can we continue to do to make things better? And also staying at the forefront of things so we can continue to train and help other people.
Awesome. Okay, that wraps up our half an hour fully. So I hope everyone has gotten some takeaways from AI today. That was such an insightful chat. I know that some people have been in the comments as well, and we will be getting to you after this live stream as well. Thank you so much for engaging. And yeah, Jon, thanks so much. This was such an incredible, insightful webinar. It was such a pleasure to chat to you. For everyone that's listening in, please go follow Jon and go check out his newsletter as well. It's honestly been my favorite thing to read as well. So yeah, go check that out. And anything else, Jon?
No, that's it from me. Thank you very much for having me on and putting up with me rambling on about AI and SEO for half an hour.
No, I was going to say, whenever you do this again, please tell us because I'd love to be there. It was really cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for listening.
Bye.
Cool. All right. You can stay on.